All right, welcome back to Road to Knife Edition Part 4. So in this part, we're going to go over specific regimental doctrines, if anything in them has specifically changed. Essentially, I will also be covering another sister document to this one that actually breaks down a lot of different regiment archetypes that have secondary abilities you would choose, much like some of the more recent codexes and their customs, like the AdMech one. So we'll start off with the actual named regiments first. So the first one is Born Soldiers, so Cadium. I don't think there should be really any change there. With a lot of the changes we've made to data sheets, orders, and everything like that, I think even though moving them and losing out on the reroll ones to hit isn't such a huge loss, but it's also a nice thing to have. If I was to make a change, I would probably just get rid of the description for their take aim buff, so they could do that at any time rather than having to stay still to do it. That's probably the only change I would make if I was to make one. But at the moment, I think they're okay. They're supported by a lot of characters. I've changed the Relic of Lost Cadia relic to be a little bit more powerful in general, but less powerful against chaos, so it's better most of the time. And then, obviously, we may change and additions to orders and stuff like that as well. Similar thing for Brutal Strength, Catechin. I think they don't really need a change as well. Out of Cadian and Catechin, they were the two best named ones. Valhallan, weirdly enough, I haven't changed, mainly because we're basically adding in and making units better. So, say, for example, they would be primarily the conscript-focused regiment. So we're making conscripts better with their raw recruits ability, so that indirectly buffs Valhallans by making them not run as badly. And then we're also going to be adding Valhallan unique characters, so they could also provide some kind of buffs there. Heirloom weapons for Vestroyans. I'm slightly changing that one. So units with this doctrine can add 6 inch to the maximum range of heavy assault and rapid fire weapons. They fire, which would normally have a range of 24 inch or more. So basically we're adding just assault weapons into that. So things like the grenade launcher will now go up to 30 inch range. And I think the melter cannon that the Devil Dog has is also assault 24 inch. So that would also actually go up to a 30 inch range. So that means it'd be a 15 inch melter, just like the multi-melter itself. So that also adds those in to make them a little bit better. Nothing else has really changed there for the regiment doctrine, just that. I think that was a nice addition. Industrial efficiency for Armageddon. So pure and simple, I've given Chimeras gain the assault vehicle ability. So basically, Armageddon is known for their infantry training, day in, day out with Chimeras. They use them all the time in mass. I've also changed it slightly where they can also stack with the button-up order I've said in the last video. So basically, they can now get a ignore -2 AP if they're both under the effect of the order and with their intrinsic AP -1 ignoring. And then, I have removed discipline shooters, but I feel like what they've gained has gotten a lot better than what they've lost. Next is Swift as the Wind for Talan. So I haven't changed this too much, but I have made it also work on heavy weapons. So infantry units with this doctrine are eligible to shoot in which a turn they advance, and if they do so, models can make attacks with weapons they are equipped with, excluding heavy weapons, so this part's fine. So this hasn't really changed very much, as if they had not advanced. So basically rapid fire and advancing, assault weapons can shoot normally. In addition, infantry models do not suffer the penalty to hit the hit rolls for moving and shooting heavy weapons. So basically you can move your heavy bolter and still shoot that at BS4 plus or BS3 plus, and then the vehicle part of the doctrine for advancing and then turning those weapons to assault, that hasn't changed either. So basically just a very small buff to heavy weapons in this regiment. Stormtroopers, that one I've just quickly just changed to a unmodified hit roll of 6 scores an additional hit at half range or less, rather than it just being an additional shot. So you have to then hit with the additional shot. So I've gotten rid of that part, just made it just an auto hit. That's where Games Workshop is moving towards with these kind of rules now. So that's what we're going to do here. Parade drill for Mordian. I have changed that one quite a little bit as well. So this one is if the base of every model in an infantry unit with this doctrine is touching the base of at least one other model from the same unit, the unit has +1 leadership and counts as having the defensible trait. So they may make use of either hold steady or set to defend. So basically we're going back to the old 3.5 Codex of Close Order Drill, which is what the Mordian parade drill is supposed to represent. So back then that used to give units +1 leadership and +1 initiative if they were in base-to-base contact. So basically we've kind of just brought that back as it was. So defensible means they can either, I forgot what it was, I think it's +1 to hit in melee, or you get +1 for Overwatch, so it's overwatching on 5s. So combined with orders like this pressing fire order, that means you can then make a unit both Overwatch for a supporting unit with your order, and then they would be able to make use of defensible. So that means Mordians essentially kind of get what they previously had of being able to Overwatch better, plus being able to use set to defend as well. So they're better in close combat as well in the first turn at least. Then we move on to the Astra Militarum custom regiment doctrines. So this is where I've made some drastic changes, and then I've gone through each individual regiment archetype that you can have. So going through all that here, I'm going to link a separate document. So I've just named that one Experimental Rules for Regimental Selection, and that has about, I think it's 8 pages of different custom regiments that you could potentially choose. So the first one is an armoured regiment. So your primary ability that you must take is jury-rigged repairs. I've changed that to just be healing 1 wound on a damaged vehicle a turn rather than rolling a dice just to speed the game up. Then you choose between secondaries below. So you choose between gunnery experts, one I've made that's called relic plating. So basically any vehicle, excluding vehicles with 9 wounds or less, has a 6+ invo save. So a lot of people have been asking for things like that. They'll make just things like Chimeras, Lehman Russes, even Bane Blades if you take this regiment, just have a 6+ invo save. So not amazing, but you don't want them to be completely overpowered with invo saves. And then spotter details. So yes, that means you do have to choose between gunnery experts and spotter details, which I do believe is a lot fairer than just when nerfing the demolisher cannon basically. So you can either make the demolisher cannon better with gunnery experts, more reliable shot wise, or you can give it more range. Because basically that and the Punisher. The Punisher doesn't just want spotter details, but the Demolisher wants both gunnery experts and spotter details. So, getting rid of that little thing there. Then the next one is an artillery regiment. So their primary is gunnery experts. So you always get that one. Then you choose between one of the secondaries below. So I have changed combined auspex with how that works. So basically, how I've changed that is when resolving a shooting attack made by a regiment vehicle with this doctrine, whilst it is within 3 inches of another friendly regiment vehicle, the target of this shooting attack does not receive the benefit of cover. So basically they combine their 2 auspex arrays, and then they can better make fire patterns against the unit they're shooting at and just deny them the cover. The next one is camo netting. So basically when resolving an attack made by a ranged weapon against a vehicle, again, excluding vehicles with 9 wounds or less, with this doctrine, if this unit did not move in its previous movement phase, it is treating as having the benefit of cover to its saving throws. So basically brings back the old school camo netting. So if your, say, for example, Basilisk does not move, and it won't because it's an artillery piece, it's going to have a 2+ save because it's in cover. Then there's experienced artillerists. artillerists. Oh my god, I cannot pronounce it, I'm sorry. When resolving an attack made with an artillery weapon, so going back to the definitions I outlined in the first part, by a vehicle model with this doctrine against a unit that is within half range, an unmodified hit roll of 6 scores 1 additional hit. So basically, think of it as something like they either pre-sighted the battlefield before the enemy came. They have, maybe done aerial reconnaissance and drawn maps up so they know where to shoot. So the closer the enemy are, the more accurate their fire is getting, basically. The next one is a cavalry regiment. So their primary is agile warriors. So when an infantry or cavalry unit with this doctrine advances or charges, you can re-roll the dice. So it basically just makes cavalry a bit more reliable to get into their close combat and get around the battlefield. Then they can choose between one of the secondary below. So cyber steed, cavalry units have a 6+ invulnerable save. If a model already has an invulnerable save, it is improved by 1 to a maximum of 4+. So something like a Death Rider Commander, which I've no longer made Krieg, I've made them a regiment unit, can now have a 4+ invo, while all other cavalry units would have a 6+ invo save. Hardened fighters, so infantry, cavalry, and sentinel units may reroll to hit rolls of 1 in the fight phase, so it makes them a little bit better in close combat. Or you can choose thoroughbred steeds. So cavalry units may still charge even after advancing. So basically you can roll your advance, re-roll your advance, and then you can charge and then re-roll your charge if you really wanted to get that kind of immense distance with your cavalry. Next one is a Death World Regiment. So their primary is Death World Physiology. Infantry and cavalry units with this doctrine add 1 to their strength characteristics. So basically you get the main part of the catechin ability, but you do not get the rest. Then you can choose between one of the secondaries below. So out of the 3 secondaries you can choose between is hardened fighters. So I've changed that one. Basically going back, as we said, it's going to be similar to the cavalry regiment one. So infantry, cavalry, and sentinel units may reroll to hit rolls of 1 in the fight phase. I've changed Monster Hunter slightly. So I've given it to these guys instead, rather than just leaving it as a generic one. When resolving an attack made by a heavy weapon by a model with this doctrine against a monster unit or vehicle unit, an unmodified wound roll of 6 inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to other damage. Then they can choose between wilderness survivors as well. So I have slightly changed wilderness survivors to both encompass infantry or cavalry units, just because it makes sense that a cavalry unit, obviously the rider is going to be used to surviving in the wilderness, know how to forage, and they have cavalry rather than vehicles, so they can be a lot quieter, and also they know how to live off the land, so it makes sense for that. The next regiment archetype we have is the Drop Regiment. So basically this is like your old school Elysians and stuff like that. So their primary ability is drop troops. So infantry units excluding conscripts with this doctrine gain the aerial drop ability. So basically you can make like your infantry squad and stuff like that as like mini scions. But it obviously takes up one of your custom regiment abilities. Then you can choose between one of the secondaries below. So they have the choice of carapace armor. So infantry units, excluding conscripts, improve their save to a 4+. Disciplined shooters. Infantry units with this doctrine can add 6 inch to the maximum range of assault or rapid fire weapons they fire, which would normally have a range of 18 inch or more. So what that means is I am adding grenadiers back into the main codex. They're armed with hotshot las guns. So that's 18 inch normally. So that means that would go up to a 24 inch range if you took that custom doctrine. Also means grenade launchers can also go from 24 to 48 inch range rather than always just being plasma guns. Just makes it a little bit more interesting. Try and make grenade launchers a little bit better. Then the last custom option you can choose between is lightweight construction. So infantry units do not suffer the penalty for moving and firing heavy weapons. So that means if you deep strike, say for example, might sound a little bit weird, but deep strike, say a heavy weapon squad of las cannons, you could actually fire them without a -1. The next regiment archetype we have is a feudal world regiment. So their primary is Lord's Approval. So that hasn't really changed, but I have made it allowable between both infantry and cavalry. I have also given it, in addition, they can add 1 to their leadership characteristic if they're within 6 inch of a friendly officer. So feudal regiments, think of these guys as like being like your typical feudal system with their noble lords. Basically, they're all sworn to defend their noble lord, who would probably most likely be their officer. So they're sworn to defend him and would fight harder around him. So that's represented by 1, getting that exploding 6, and also getting a +1 leadership. Then they choose between the secondaries below. So we've got Agile Warriors again, so re-rolling advance and charge dice. Warrior weapons, so this goes back to the old 3.5 edition codex, except it's no longer a points cost, it's just a ability you can take as your doctrine. So infantry units swap their las guns for las pistols and chainswords. Models that already come equipped with a pistol and chainsword get 1 attack to their characteristic, and this still applies even if you upgrade their chainsword to a power weapon or power fist. So that means a sergeant from an infantry squad would have 3 base attacks, making them a little bit more worthwhile to actually purchase that power sword if you're going to do that. Also means things like your company commander would go from 4 attacks to 5 attacks. 3 attacks to 4 attacks base. So that would make them a little bit more interesting to actually give weapon upgrades to. Then the last one is Wilderness Survivors. Again, just changed it to apply to both infantry and cavalry, just to make it a bit more interesting. Next, we have a heavy infantry regiment. So their primary is carapace armor. So all infantry units, excluding conscripts, again, they get a 4+ save. Then they choose between the 3 secondaries below. So there's cyber enhancement. So it goes back to the old 3.5 codex. So infantry units have a 6+ invo save. If a model already has an invo save, it is improved by +1 to a maximum of 4+. Disciplined shooters. So again, if they have 18 inch or more, they get for upfire and assault weapons, they get +6 inch to their range. Hot shot weapons. So basically, infantry units, excluding conscripts, swap their las pistols or las guns for hot shot las pistols or hot shot las guns. So basically, you can use one of your regimental doctrines to actually give your infantry better equipment, to represent something like a high-tech world that basically produces nothing but grenaders. So instead of actually just purchasing grenaders. Then the next one after that is a heavy tank regiment. So their primary is extra armor. So this goes back to the old vehicle upgrade that you can take. So I've just changed that to be a little bit more applicable to 9th edition. So I've changed it to tank models. So tank as in the tank definition, add 2 to their wounds characteristic. These additional wounds do not count towards the wound thresholds in secondary missions or when dealing with terrain. So, it doesn't bring them up to that 18 wounds or more if they happen to do that. Then they choose between the secondaries below. So we've got camo netting again. Perhaps slightly less useful for a tank that's going to keep moving. But if you say have a battle cannon or a Vanquisher Lehman Russ hiding in the backfield, they can actually get a 2+ save as well as 2 wounds. Relic plating, so same as the one at the top. Vehicles get a 6+ invo save. So basically, this is the regiment archetype you take if you want very survivable vehicles. Then there's spotter details there as well. The one after that, we've got Hive World Regiment. So they have slum fighters. So just made a slight change to that of infantry, cavalry, or sentinel models with this doctrine. If you get an unmodified hit roll of a 6, you get 1 extra hit. Then they can choose between the secondaries below. Chem Inhaler, so that's your, basically it's half of the Valhallan doctrine. So if you take each time a combat attrition test is taken for a unit with this doctrine, halve the number of models that flee from the unit, rounding fractions down. So basically, harkens back again to the old 3.5 codex. They're kind of being drugged through their chem inhaler that they're wearing on their face. Cyber enhancement, so 6+ invo saves. For infantry, then I've added one called Press Gang Leaders. So when resolving an attack with a melee weapon by an officer model with this doctrine in a turn in which it made a charge move, was charged, or performed a heroic intervention, you can reroll hit rolls and wound rolls of 1. So, if you want to try and buff up your officers, give them power swords and stuff, maybe it might make them a little bit more useful. Next regiment type is a hunter-killer regiment. So this kind of regiment, it's a little bit fun. You don't really hear it about too much in the lore these days. This is more of like your sentinel / like hellhound regiment. So their primary is what I'm calling fire and maneuver. So if a vehicle with this doctrine advances until the end of the turn, the type characteristic of any heavy weapon it is equipped with is a change to assault. So basically, it's kind of half of the Talon doctrine, just to mean like you can assault, like charge. You can do an advanced move with your Sentinels or Hellhound and still be able to fire all their weapons. Then they can choose between one of the secondaries below. So big game hunters, each time a Sentinel makes an attack with a ranged weapon against a vehicle or monster unit, it adds 1 to the attack's hit roll. So you can get your Sentinels to a BS of 3+, if you're shooting a vehicle or monster. Then there's jury-rigged repairs. Again, that's just been simplified to regain 1 lost wound a turn. Then Pyromaniacs. So Pyromaniacs itself hasn't changed, but I've added more options into it. So there's Flamer, Heavy Flamer, Twin Heavy Flamer, Inferno Cannon, and Inferno Gun. So Inferno Gun is what the Malcador Infernus has. And Inferno Cannon is obviously what the Hellhound has. For some reason, wasn't in there, but it makes sense because it's a flame weapon. Then the next option is Light Infantry Regiment. So they have their primary as camo cloaks, or I should say chameleon line cloaks. Your opponent must subtract 1 from their hit rolls when shooting at infantry, excluding conscripts. With this doctrine, when they are more than 12 inch away, they have 3 secondaries as well, so all of these will have 3 secondaries of some description. Disciplined shooters, so again, add 6 inch range to rapid fire or assault weapons that have 18 inch or more. They can choose fire from the hip. So I've changed this one slightly as well. So basically, if they advance, they do not, they ignore the penalty for firing an assault weapon after advancing, and they treat all rapid fire weapons as assault weapons until the end of that turn. Then I've brought back the old sharpshooters from the 3.5 Codex as well. So infantry units re-roll hit rolls of 1 in the shooting phase when firing assault weapons or rapid fire weapons, provided they did not move in the movement phase. In addition, shooting attacks with sniper rifles add 1 to that attack's hit roll, provided the model did not move in the movement phase. So kind of like half of the Cadian doctrine, except you get a +1 for sniper rifle rather than re-rolling ones for that. Then we go to line infantry regiments. So their primary is disciplined shooters. Then they can choose between fire from the hip, las drill, which I'm making somewhat similar to something like bolter drill. So when an infantry unit resolves an attack with a las pistol, las gun, hot shot las pistol, hot shot las gun, multi-laser or las cannon, with this doctrine against a unit that is within half range, an unmodified hit roll of 6 scores 1 extra hit. So basically, you can get a little bit more shots out of your las guns or any other laser weapons that they might be armed with. Then they also can choose between sharpshooters. Now we move on to mechanized regiments. So their primary is what I'm calling assault ramps. So that one's going to be pretty self-explanatory. So it's any transport vehicle, excluding vehicles with 9 wounds or less, have the assault vehicle ability. Then they can choose between one of the following below. So they've got carapace armor, gunnery experts, and jury-rigged repairs. Then we go to a reconnaissance regiment. So they have primary recon experts. At the start of the first battle round, but before the first turn begins, you can move infantry units, excluding conscripts, with this doctrine up to 6 inch. It cannot end this move within 9 inch of enemy models. So basically, they get a pre-game 6 inch move to get towards the middle of the field. They can choose between fire from the hip, lightweight construction, or wilderness survivors. Then we go on to the siege regiment. So basically, things like Death Corps of Krieg. Their primary is iron discipline, which is basically half of the Krieg doctrine. So each time a combat attrition test is taken for a unit with this doctrine, ignore any and all modifiers. In addition, they can add 1 to their leadership characteristic if they are within 6 inch of a friendly officer. So basically, they get a slight improvement to their leadership so they can try and pass those leadership checks a little bit easier. And if they do fail, they don't lose as many models. And they can choose between one of the secondaries below. So they have a choice between disciplined shooters, gunnery experts, representing that they have a lot of artillery, and then sharpshooters. Then lastly, we have our super heavy tank regiment. So this is one you try and take purely for like a Bane Blade super heavy detachment. Or a super heavy auxiliary if you're going to do that. So these ones going to be a little bit more special. So the primary here is superior metallurgy. So each time a super heavy tank model with this doctrine would lose a wound, roll a d6. On a 6, that wound is not lost. Then you choose between one of the secondaries below, death before dismount. So super heavy tank models with this doctrine, whose characteristics can change as they suffer damage, are considered to have double the number of wounds remaining for the purposes of determining what those characteristics are. So basically they get the other half of the Valhallan doctrine, but they can also ignore wounds on a 6. So it makes them much more durable. There's gunnery experts they can choose from, obviously to give them a damage buff. Then the last one is renowned crews. So super heavy tank models gain the character keyword. So that means you can make one of them your warlord if you wanted to. In addition, super heavy tank models add 2 to their wounds characteristic. These additional wounds do not count towards the wound thresholds in secondary missions. So it doesn't bring them over say 30 wounds or something if that does anything, because I have actually increased Bane Blade's wounds to 28. Also, basically has no effect there. So that's everything for regimental doctrines. Again, leave any questions or comments if you like, if you want me to change anything, or if you have any criticisms of that. And thanks for that. No, thanks for listening. And I really need to have a look at maybe how to add some backgrounds or something. Like, as I said, I'm completely new to this. I'm just kind of just sharing my thoughts out loud. I've got nothing to do. I've just been sick recently, so I thought I'd just air out some of the things I've been working on. So, no, thanks very much for your time, and appreciate it.